What does the word gender mean? Yeah, Wabo, you want to start us off?
Does the question of gender belong in an elementary school classroom?
Hi, I'm Ella and I'm a senior at Nature High School. Our school gives us the opportunity to do something called Senior Project, which excuses you from the last 4 weeks of your classes to pursue any interest. I've chosen to look at representation in the classroom and specifically talk about gender to a group of second graders. At first I was nervous about working with such a taboo topic, but I have an amazing and open mentor that has been gracious enough to give me time in her classroom, a great group of second graders that love to learn, and an amazing district that is letting me do this. So how do we talk about gender to a group of second graders?
I've been a second grade teacher for a number of years. I've taught pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, first. I've taught adults. And no matter the age, gender comes up. And I'm convinced it's because it is one of the first identifiers of who we are. Whether you're talking about, my name's Kate, I'm a girl, or whether you're talking about transgender issues and anything in between. Gender is something that people of all ages have some relationship with, have some thoughts about, have been taught something about. We do it subconsciously with our babies at a very young age by dressing them in pink and blue and all those kinds of things. So it's very much present, and I'm a believer in talking with people about what they want to talk about and what they already know and what they bring to the classroom environment. So yes, it's absolutely appropriate to talk about. The ways that it's talked about could be different based on the age, the type of student, the question that's asked, all those kinds of things. But gender, for sure, it's going to come up. And I wanted to.
I wanted to start super basic with this project. And I want to also start by saying that gender is one of those topics that can easily be perceived as overcomplexed and not something that you can talk to younger kids about. I wanted to take it back to just plain old gender roles. And going off gender roles, looking at expression and self-expression. I was lucky enough to come into the classroom when they started their poetry and arts unit, so I got to use art as a means to teach them about self-expression. So many people came to me when I started this project and said, I think this is too advanced, I think it'll go over their head, I don't think they're going to understand it, and we have to give them a little bit of credit. They do understand it, and their identity is something that they've understood for a while. They're born with a gender identity, and they're born into a society with pretty strict gender roles that they perceive they need to follow. So on the first day when I first started talking to them, I had them do a writing assignment just answering the question, what does gender mean? And instead of talking about being a boy or a girl, they instantly went into gender roles. Boys have to play sports, girls like the color pink, and they were so set in their ways. So then my goal became, well, how can we kind of start to break down those barriers, and where can we go from there?
I feel like as human beings, we're always learning, we're always thinking about things and things that we're passionate about. So child wants to know, who am I? These kids have told me I can't like the color pink because I'm a boy, but I do like the color pink. That starts with 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. That's a very common kind of thing for kids to struggle with. So by the time they're in second grade, a lot of kids will have they'll have the conversation down. No, boys can like pink, but you can tell they're not really convinced of that yet. But they've talked to an adult who supported their color preference. So they're still learning. So I think if I know if a child is ready to ask the question, they're ready to have the conversation.
I started the gender talks by getting the whole class together for a group discussion, because I felt that having everybody on the same page to start with was a great platform. And we started very simple with, what does gender mean? And they talked for a bit, and then we set them loose to go into some writer's workshop time and write about the same topic. And we did that for a couple of days of talking and writing and then following up on what they talked about. And towards the end, and this was now in week 2 of our gender talks, that's when we did our art project, and we looked at 2 artists, Frida Kahlo and Mark Leeming, who both took gender bending to another level. So Frida Kahlo, who shows her femininity in a way that not many women did, especially in the 50s. And then we looked at Mark Leeming's work, who did a series called The Bearded Brutes of all of these masculine men in full makeup with glitter on their beards. And they got a kick out of that for a while because I think they had never seen something like it before. But ultimately, they started to understand what expression was, and then they got to draw.
That people, when they express themselves, they can express in a lot of different ways. When you express yourself, like, you're showing how you feel, and then when you identify, you can identify, like, by a boy or a girl, or, like, what you do and don't do. I express myself, like, a lot of ways, and I don't, like, know that
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
What's one way that you express yourself?
Being happy.
Just being happy. I love it.
Well, I learned that I can do whatever I want. Like, I could play football even if only boys were playing.
I think an over-enthusiastic young teacher can start with, okay, everybody, today we're going to start talking about gender. I think there needs to be a place for it. And the place for the beginning of the conversation about gender happens in little bits and pieces. Because as I said before, it's the thread that goes through the classroom. It's the thread that goes through the school life of the children. So it isn't today we're studying the letter G for gender. As it naturally comes up, it will come up. And if the teacher's paying attention, they'll be able to look for these opportunities and have really good, rich conversations. But you also have to build a classroom of trust, and you have to help the children to trust each other, to listen respectfully to one another. And children need to know that they're going to be heard. So as the adult in the room, you need to make sure that they know and that they have experience with you're listening to them. So that's an important part of that process.
If we don't start somewhere, they're going to grow up their whole life set in these gender role ways. And who knows what kind of opportunities they'd be missing out on if they didn't think they could play sports, they didn't think they could like fashion, and they couldn't be themselves. So how do we start talking about gender in the classroom? You kind of just start talking. At some point, you just need to understand that these are topics that everybody deserves to be acknowledged in. Treat them as the humans they are, and can't shield them from anything, because that's where they'll end up with a loss.